fucking right now. Okay, the summary of the neural system. Like, the neural system coordinates and integrates functions as well as metabolic and hemostatic activities of all the organs. Now, neurons, the functional units of neural system, are excitable cells due to a differential concentration gradient of ions across the membrane. The electrical potential difference across the resting neural membrane is called the resting potential. The nerve impulse is conducted along the axon membrane in the form of wave of depolarization and repolarization. Now, a synapse is formed by the membranes of presynaptic neuron and a postsynaptic neuron, which may or may not be separated by a gap called synaptic cleft. So, a synapse is formed by the membranes of a presynaptic neuron or a postsynaptic neuron, which may or may not be separated by a gap called synaptic cleft. Chemicals involved in the transmission of impulses at chemical synapses are called neurotransmitters. So, chemicals involved in the transmission of impulses at a chemical synapses are called neurotransmitters. Now, human neural system consists of two parts, that is central nervous system, that is CNS, and peripheral nervous system, that is PNS. Now, the CNS consists of the brain and the spinal cord. The brain can be divided into three major parts: forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. The forebrain consists of cerebrum, thalamus, and hypothalamus. The cerebrum is longitudinally divided into two halves that are connected by the corpus callosum. A very important part of the forebrain, called hypothalamus, controls the body temperature, eating, and drinking. Inner parts of cerebral hemispheres and a group of associated deep structures form a complex structure called limbic system, which is concerned with olfaction, autonomic responses, regulation of sexual behavior, expression of emotional reactions, and motivation. I repeat it again: inner parts of cerebral hemispheres and a group of associated deep structures from a complex structure called limbic system, which is okay. I repeat it again: inner parts of cerebral hemisphere, and a group of associated deep structures form a complex structure called limbic system, which is concerned with olfaction, autonomic responses, regulation of sexual behavior, expression of emotional reactions, and motivation. The midbrain receives and integrates visual, tactile, and auditory inputs. The midbrain receives and integrates visual, tactile, and auditory inputs. The hindbrain comprises pons, cerebellum, and medulla. The hindbrain comprises pons, cerebellum, and medulla. The hindbrain comprises pons, cerebellum, and medulla. The cerebellum integrates information received from the semicircular canals of the ear and the auditory system. The cerebellum integrates information received from the semicircular canals of the ear and the auditory system. The cerebellum integrates information received from the semicircular canals of the ear and the auditory system. The medulla contains centers which control respiration, cardiovascular reflexes, and gastric secretions. Very important. The medulla contains centers which control respiration, cardiovascular reflexes, and gastric secretions. Pons consist of fiber tracts that interconnect different regions of the brain. So, pons consist of fiber tracts that interconnect different regions of the brain. Right? So, this is it. Now we are going to study the exercises. So, briefly describe the structure of the brain. So, it contains forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain, right? So, forebrain contains the cerebrum, hypothalamus, and thalamus, right? And hindbrain consists of the cerebellum, medulla oblongata, and pons. Now, compare the following: the CNS, that is, and PNS. So, central nervous system and peripheral neural system. So, PNS contains the autonomic neural system, that is sympathetic and parasympathetic. PNS and CNS, that is central, it contains the brain and spinal cord. The resting potential and action potential. So, resting potential when the neuron is not conducting any kind of impulses. So, this is the resting potential and action potential when neuron is conducting some kind of impulses, that is depolarization. So, okay, explain the following process: a polarization of the membrane of a nerve fiber. Explain the following process: a polarization of the membrane of a nerve fiber. So, membrane is polarized. It means membrane is polarized. It means it is in the resting stage, right? And then the depolarization of the membrane of a nerve fiber. It means the membrane is excited. Now it is going to conduct an impulse. So, transmission of a nerve impulse across a chemical synapses. Transmission of a nerve impulse across a chemical synapses. It is okay. There is a presynaptic, then there is a there is a I mean there is a presynaptic, then there is a synaptic cleft, and that is synaptic gap, and there is a postsynaptic. Okay, now draw label diagrams of the following neuron and brain. Then neuron and brain, draw label diagrams of the following, that is neuron and brain. So neuron, there are dendrites, and then their cell body, and then there is a axon, and then neurulima, and then there is a axon terminal, that is knob. And a brain. Now brain, the brain, if you have the brain. Write short notes on the following: neural coordination, forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain, and synapse. So, neural coordination, forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain, and synapse. Now, neural coordination, neural coordination, it is taking place with the help of the nerves or neurons. There are the forebrain. Now, forebrain, the forebrain. Then midbrain, it is mainly participates in the usual inputs and all that. It increases the through the semicircular canals, right? Then the midbrain and hindbrain, it the cerebellum, and then there is medulla oblongata, and then there is pons that connects the different region of the brains, right? And then synapse, what does synapse do? It is a gap, that is synapses, that is presynaptic and then postsynaptic, and then there is a gap between them, and there is a gap between them. So this is it, like. So synapses. Now give a brief account of mechanism of synaptic transmission. So when does the synaptic transmit goes? The synaptic transmit goes from like presynaptic, then synaptic cleft, and then postsynaptic. Postsynaptic, the synaptic transmission, there are neurotransmitter, and then there is motor unit, that is NMJ, that is neuromuscular junction, then there is release of calcium and all that happens. Okay, no, this is for like, I think this is for like contraction of muscles, not in here. But here is not the here is the neurotransmitter is the acetylcholine, like that, and they enters into the synaptical cleft and all that. Then the things get started from there. Right? And the synapse. And then now explain the role of Na plus in the generation of action potential. So explain the role of Na plus in the generation of action potential. So during the action potential, the Na plus gets into the gets outside of the outside of the membrane. Okay, 3 Na plus gets outside of the membrane. Differentiate between myelinated and non-myelinated axons, dendrites and axons, thalamus, hypothalamus, cerebellum, and cerebellum. And myelinated, non-myelinated, they both have the Schwann cell, but Schwann cell produce the myelin sheath only in the myelinated sheath. Non-myelinated does not have the Schwann cell, that does not produce the myelinated sheath. Now, myelinated sheath is present in, you can see the in ncert. Like non-myelinated, I think it is somatic and all and autonomic. Dendrites and axons. So dendrites and axons, like dendrites and axons. So dendrites and axon, it can conduct the impulse towards the axon body, right? And axons, you really know. So thalamus and hypothalamus. Like thalamus, what does thalamus do? Thalamus, it is a thalamus. So thalamus. So hypothalamus, it controls like eating, drinking, and on all that. Thalamus, it is like motor sensory signaling. It has a function like motor signaling and all that. So cerebrum and cerebellum. So cerebrum, cerebrum and cerebellum. Cerebrum, that is a cerebral hemisphere. It cuts into two. It divides into two halves, right? And then cerebellum, right? The answer to the following: which part of the human brain is the most developed? Which part of the human brain is the most developed? The forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. Which part of our central neural system acts as a master clock? So master clock may be hypothalamus or pituitary gland. Master clock, no, master clock, it is pineal gland, because it helps in the sleeping and all that. Distinguish between afferent neurons and efferent neurons. Afferent neurons, I mean, from it carries the signal from sensory or receptor to CNS, and efferent neurons, it carries the impulses from CNS to the motor, passes to the motor neurons, right? You can see that, like impulse conduction in a myelinated nerve fiber and unmyelinated nerve fiber. So impulse conduction in a myelinated nerve fiber, it is I think it is faster than the non-myelinated nerve fiber, because I think it is not fast in the myelinated nerve fiber, because there is nodes of Ranvier. I think it is fast, and nodes of Ranvier is not present in the unmyelinated nerve fiber. Cranial nerves and spinal nerves, you can see the cranial nerves and spinal nerves, so this is how your chapter is done. Well done.